Coming as part of update 1.12, Payday 3 has received a big overhaul as to how medic bags and first aid kits work, with the addition of the adrenaline mechanic, as well as the new Fortitude skill line. The two of these have been added to try and give alternatives to the current armor system, as well as incentivizing the usage of medic bags over armor bags, which have dominated the game's meta for quite some time now. This comes as a fairly welcome addition in my eyes, as Payday 3 has definitely been played with a lack of variety and choices of how players can stay alive during heists. Of course, the obvious parallel can be drawn to Payday 2, where you could build yourself to rely upon your armor, your health, your dodge chance, or any mix of the three. In Payday 3 though, it'd just been armor bags, and that'd basically been it. Anything else, and you were just shooting yourself in the foot. This is actually what killed my, and I imagine many other people's excitement for Payday 3 initially, as everyone was running armor bags. You didn't have much reason to pick the other deployables, and it killed the variety in builds that the series has become so well known for, but this all changes with the addition of adrenaline. Adrenaline comes in as a buff to both medic bags and first aid kits, letting you get, in effect, overheal if you use them and heal over your maximum health. When you have adrenaline, it takes priority over your armor, meaning that if you have both armor and adrenaline available and you take damage, the damage will first be dealt to your adrenaline until you lose all of it, and then the damage starts to be dealt to your armor. Adrenaline is temporary though, and will slowly drain over time, with 1 point of adrenaline draining every 2 seconds. What this means is that you're given a little bit of a time limit on your adrenaline, and you'll have to manage losing it to both taking damage, and also to slowly losing it over time. However, you're given a little leeway with the passive decay, as if you take damage to your adrenaline, it pauses the decay for the next 6 seconds. The amount of adrenaline you get whenever you heal is dictated by where you get your healing from, as healing from first aid kits will give you half the amount of adrenaline that it would if you would use a medic bag. This adds an even larger amount of synergy with medic bags than you'd initially think, as to obtain the most amount of adrenaline, you'll have to use them. Adding on top of the new adrenaline mechanic, Fortitude is the newest skill line added to the game, revolving around buffing adrenaline as a mechanic. Of course, with Fortitude being a new skill line, and with how strong of an addition it in adrenaline is, it's worth going over the tree in detail to see just why it's so powerful. In its basic form, the Fortitude skill increases your base health by 50, and if you heal 2 or above your maximum health, you gain grit. In its ace form, your total amount of downs is increased by 1, and you gain a 50% increase to your bleed out time, going from 30 seconds to 45 seconds. The basic form of Fortitude is deceptively good. With the additional 50 health, it also increases the max amount of adrenaline you can have, as your maximum amount of adrenaline is directly proportional to your maximum amount of health. It's a great buff, hidden directly in plain sight. Getting grit from healing 2 or above your maximum health isn't too useful, as it requires you to not have adrenaline to begin with, but it can be used as a nice source of grit to start a heist off with. Similarly to its basic form, the ace form of Fortitude is also deceptively good. Though it may seem small, the increase to our total amount of downs is going to be massive for increasing the strength of adrenaline later with some of the skills we'll have access to. The increase to bleed out time isn't too useful, as with how powerful you'll become when you start to build into adrenaline, you'll basically never go down. Health Siphon heals you for 40% of the amount of health that a teammate heals for whenever they use one of your medic bags. Of course, if the amount of health you gain from the interaction goes above your maximum health, it gets converted into additional adrenaline. If you're playing in a group, this skill can be incredible for sustaining your adrenaline for longer without having to use a medic bag or first aid kit yourself, as you can get healed simply by your teammates using your medic bags. Of course, you won't be able to sustain yourself purely off of it, but it's still useful for making your adrenaline last for longer. However, due to the team-orientated nature of the skill, it serves no purpose if you're playing solo. Unyielding increases the total amount of health you have by 15 for every down you have. Supraphysiological gives you an extra 10% adrenaline for every down you have. With both Unyielding and Supraphysiological buffing your health and adrenaline based off the amount of downs you have, it puts you in a situation where the standard lining armor is just the best pick for a Fortitude setup, as it has 4 downs base, giving you an additional 60 health and an extra 40% adrenaline. Then, if you use it with Fortitude Ace, it then becomes 5 downs, giving you an additional 75 health and an extra 50% adrenaline, upping your survivability by a very large amount. Walking Tool makes your adrenaline degrade 25% slower for every down you have, as well as pausing the passive decay of your adrenaline for 15 seconds after you interact with a medic bag or first aid kit. Similarly to Unyielding and Supraphysiological, Walking Tool benefits from having more downs available. If you have 5 downs running both the standard lining armor and Fortitude Ace skill equipped, your adrenaline would degrade 125% slower. What this means is that you'll lose roughly 0.4 points of adrenaline every 2 seconds, making sustaining your adrenaline for long periods of time significantly easier. As with the massive reduction to the passive degradation, you'll only really lose noticeable amounts of it from taking damage. I get that was a little bit of a mouthful, but I hope you get what I mean. Painhouse and Bolia doubles the effect of the Edge, Grit and Rush buffs if you have them active while you have adrenaline, and gives you an additional 10% damage reduction to your adrenaline if you have any of the buffs active. This provides a very noticeable increase to the Edge, Grit and Rush buffs, going from their increases of 10% to increases of 20%. The increase to Edge lets some weapons hit some new breakpoints as well as take down dozers faster. The increase to Rush lets you move incredibly fast, and I mean incredibly fast. If you have Rush and using the standard lining armor, you already move pretty fast to begin with, but with Painless Embolia active though, you move unbelievably quickly. The biggest impact from Painless Embolia is definitely felt in the damage reduction you gain from the increased grit, alongside the additional 10% damage reduction. As increases and reductions are additive and not multiplicative, this means that we'll have a 30% damage reduction to our adrenaline. With this, we'll be able to make our adrenaline tank a lot more damage. Then, the mastery skill in the Fortitude line, Stockpile, gives your selected deployable an extra 2 charges. With this, it lets you get a lot more mileage out of your deployables, like medic bags, as if you have them maxed out alongside with Stockpile, you'll have 8 charges available. On top of this, you can use it alongside the Deep Pocket skill and the Transporter skill line for 2 medic bags with 6 charges each, for a total of 12 charges. Yeah, it's kind of absurd. Fortitude is a very different type of skill line compared to what we've already got in Payday 3, in the sense that you're not really going to be wanting to take any of the skills standalone as they have minimal, if any impact, if you're not already leaning into an adrenaline based setup. Of course though, there is the exception of Stockpile, but my general point still stands. Its design is very reminiscent of Payday 2's perk decks, where the individual cards in the deck kinda suck, but then they become good when you put them all together. It's contrapuntal to Payday 3's design with how it handles skills though, with a lot of trees having skills that are very easy to mix and match with each other. I think it works to a certain degree, as running an adrenaline based setup with Fortitude is incredibly strong, but it does have that penalty of requiring such a large skill point investment to get to that level of strength. However, the large cost investment of Fortitude is offset slightly by the increase of the total amount of skill points we recently received, as it negates part of why that large point investment is so important, and that we have to sacrifice general build utility for pure survivability. Moving on from my gripes of Fortitude's design, if you're wanting to have an incredibly strong build utilising Fortitude and Adrenaline, I've got my own personal build to share. I've been able to use this build to great success, getting multiple overkill solo completions done with it because of just how strong Adrenaline is when you start to build around it. For our primary weapons, we use the SA and the Castigo. Now, the SA and the Castigo were already a really good weapon combo well before the last update, but with some of the adjustments they made to certain skills in 1.12, they've become even better. On the SA, we modded with the CQC barrel, extended magazine, prime marksman scope, perforated grip, quick hold grip, and a light frame stock. On the Castigo, we modded with the tack barrel, LED RDS, and the tack grip. We bring medic bags, as they're an extremely easy way for us to get adrenaline, and large amounts of it too, no less. We picked the Red Fox as our overkill weapon, for the 2-shot body shot kills on dozers. For armor, we of course go with the standard lining armor so that we have the most amount of downs available. For our throwable, we pick flashbangs, just as an extra bit of utility for stunning cops. We pick infrasonic mines as our tools, as they can be useful to set up on objectives in advance to stop cops from interrupting them. For our skills, we get Medic Basic, increasing our revive speed by 20%, alongside upping the amount of charges our medic bags have by 2. Steady Hands to increase the amount of health we and our teammates heal from our medic bags by 20%, adding on additional 5% healing for every additional teammate who also has the skill. Extra charge for the 2 extra charges on our medic bags, and then Triage, increasing the amount of health we heal from medic bags and first aid kits by 15% for each of the Edge Grin Rush buffs we have active. Triage isn't too useful on medic bags, as if you have full health and use one without any of the buffs, you'll max out your adrenaline instantly, so this is more to buff first aid kits and increase the amount of adrenaline we get from them. We get Mower Basic to open up the tree, and then Ammo Funnel Replenish, to let us pick up the ammo off of cops we kill instantly, and then for it to go straight into our current magazine. This lets us stay in combat for a lot longer, as we won't have to reload as frequently. Sharpshooter Basic to open up the tree and act as our source of edge in the build, and then Precision Shot. Precision Shot has received a rework, where the skill now does extra damage based off the magnification of your scope, and will also penetrate an additional target as long as you have edge. This is why we picked up the big scope on the SA earlier, as with it, the skill applies to the SA and increases its damage by a massive amount, being able to one-shot body shot every enemy type aside from dozers and shields, as well as giving it the extra utility and being able to hit 2 targets with one shot. We also get Speed Aim, making scoping in faster, just to make the SA's big scope a bit more comfortable to use. We then get Enforcer to act as our source of grit in the build, and then Combat Reload, to let us be infinitely cycling our edge and grit throughout the heist. We get Manipulator Ace so that our hostages count as 2 hostages, letting us get an additional resource from a trade. Silver Tongue to let us get an additional resource whenever we trade employees, guards, or cops. Negotiator so we get 2 additional resources from trades, and then Menacing, so that we can make cops surrender and become hostages, which will let us trade them for even more resources. Transporter Basic for a source of rush when picking up bags, Beast of Burden to remove the movement speed penalty of bags if we have rush, Deep Pockets for the extra medic bag, and then Powerlifter to be able to carry 2 bags at once. We ace Fortitude for the increased health and extra down, and Yielding for more health, Super Physiological for more adrenaline, Walking Tool to slow down the degradation of our adrenaline, Painless Embolia to increase the effects of our Edge Grin Rush buffs, and then Stockpile to give us 2 additional charges on our medic bags. With all these skills put together, it makes for an incredibly strong build. You can face tank pretty much everything, one-shot almost anything, and have resources for days with hostage trades. The only real issue this build has is something just inherently linked to the nature of adrenaline, and they have to be constantly keeping an eye on your adrenaline and making sure you have enough medic bags and first aid kits to keep your adrenaline up. Though, with how many times we'll be able to use our own medic bags, and with how many resources we'll be able to obtain from trades, we'll never reasonably be able to run out of adrenaline. I think that's part of the issue with adrenaline and Fortitude. It's such an unreasonably strong way to play the game. It makes the cops feel like they shoot rubber bullets, as you can just tank so much damage with adrenaline, and then very easily keep a constant supply of it too. I think it's also emblematic of an issue Payday 3 is suffering from. The game starts as being genuinely challenging for your average Joe, but with this, the adaptive armor, and the other changes made to certain skills and mechanics, the game almost feels pathetically easy at times. When I'm playing on Overkill, it feels like I'm back playing Payday 2's Overkill, the middle of the road difficulty that doesn't pose any challenge if you've played the game for even a moderately small amount of time. Like a lot of things in Payday though, this is entirely my own opinion, and I can understand that these additions are fun, and they are getting people to pick the game back up. I just think it's a bad quick fix for the issues the game fundamentally has with its gameplay without making any substantial changes to it. It sacrifices the game's original challenge in order to appease a player base that's slowly but surely losing interest in the game and the series as a whole. This is just my opinion though, and I'd love to hear what other people think of the addition of the adaptive armor, Fortitude, or even just the game's current state as a whole, so be sure to let me know and drop a comment about it. As usual though, I've been Cookie Dough, and have a good one.